Hey, what's up? It's Thune. We got some 10.0.7 changes last night on the PTR, and I wanted to talk about those, show the new updated talent tree, and then also I made my own talent tree that I'll talk about in a little bit. It has its own issues, but I just wanted to talk about through the, talent tree issues, so that hopefully by the time 10.0.7 and especially like 10.1 comes around, the Shaman tree will be a lot better, and hopefully that means like the class will be, in a much better state by then. So, um, but yeah, we'll just dive right into the blue post here. So Earth Ellie was changed. I don't really understand why they changed this second thing here. It no longer taunts off of people with tank spec. Sometimes that was actually like a good thing, but whatever. Astral Shift and the upgrades are increased. They gave us improved Lightning Bolt baseline essentially, and then just removed the node, which is good. Um, Thunder's Pause is buffed. This is nice in like PvP. Poison Cleansing Totem was buffed, so this now actually works in like Algathar Academy, the tree boss, for example. So that's nice. The first thing that I saw that was like, kind of annoying was Focused Insight is now gone for Resto. So Focused Insight was like the one where you Flame Shock and you get a heal bonus and mana cost reduction on your next casted heal. The mana cost reduction in particularly felt good for Resto. I'm not too concerned about like the bonus healing because they can add that back into like the spell's baseline. But I do agree with the developer's note here where like Resto Shaman has Unleash Life, Swirling Currents, Focused Insight, and Master of the Elements, and that's too many bonuses to kind of stack on top of one another. So whenever you were like preparing like Primordial Wave or like even like people were doing this in like Healing Rain every 10 seconds, using that many modifiers for each of those spells was like way too clunky and too intrusive to the spec. So I think reducing those is a good thing. Just hopefully they like compensate us for those in the future because you did lose a good bit of throughput, and definitely like mana efficiency, by losing that. So Swirling Currents was redesigned. I personally like the previous version better, and I know I just said that like I think they should like reduce the number of bonuses here, but this was a bonus that you didn't particularly play around. It was just a nice like throughput increase, and in PvP and in Mythic Plus in particularly, this was something that was like really good to have. Um, this doesn't really hurt Resto Shaman too much, but I do think like in PvP, Mythic Plus, and also for Ellie and Enhance, this is just strictly like a worse version. So we'll see if they go back on that. But um, if it were to stay the same for reading in particular, it's not too big of a difference. Maybe even like a slight buff if you play Cloudburst. And then several talents have been changed. So where did I have that? Oops. This is the updated spec tree. So you'll notice like Focused Insight's gone. Brimming with Life is now here. So you path through like Purge. But by and large, like the class tree is like the same for us. We get almost the exact same nodes that we were before. The issue that Resto Shaman has with the class tree is that you want to play both Totemic Recall and the upgrade, and you also want to play Nature's Swiftness, which is where like Ancestral Guidance used to be. So you want to play both of those, um, capstone talents, and you also want to grab Totemic Focus here in the middle. So you're still spending like the same number of points. It's like 30 or 31 points in the class tree just to grab everything that you want. So you're still really limited in points, but I don't think that you really get solved unless they fix the issue of like you wanting to grab Totemic Recall or, well, yeah, basically if you didn't want to grab Totemic Recall, then it becomes quite a bit better. So um, yeah, I don't think that's going to be something they solve with like pathing though. So I'm not too concerned on fixing that issue, I guess. And then we'll cover the rest of section really quick. So lightning bolt damage and chain lightning damage increased because they removed Call of Thunder down here. So that's nice to have in baseline. Also frees up a talent point in the top section of the tree for Mythic Plus and PvPers, which is cool. Wellspring healing reduced by 30%. This I don't agree with. Wellspring is not like overpowered by any means, and is like one thing that we've kind of like relied on. So for like Wellspring and Downpour in particular, those are spells that we sort of use to like replace chain heal casts because they're really efficient. But they're not OP because they can't be spammed. Like they have a 20 or 30 or 35-second cooldown. So I see no real reason to nerf it. If this were to go live, then you just wouldn't talent Wellspring anymore in any content, and you instead just press chain heal in those situations. So yeah, this is a bad change. I think that needs to get reverted. Water Shield has been removed. This is something I was asking for since like last July or August. So glad that finally is gone. And on top of that, they also removed what is it? Ever Rising Tide and Nature's Focus, which is a couple other things that I was asking for to be removed because no one ever took those. So now they have the opportunity to like replace them with something better, which is nice. They added a couple of capstones underneath Healing Tide Totem. I'll talk about those in a little bit, but I think the like essentially it sounds like they want to make like either Healing Tide Totem gives like cooldown reduction, which is nice, or increases the power of Healing Tide Totem. I agree, but I don't think this is the correct way to improve the power of Healing Tide Totem, and I think the 30 seconds of CDR doesn't make sense because there's not many fights where you want to like actually fit 2 minutes and 30-second timers. And also 30 seconds just isn't that much when you compare it to something like a Resto Druid. Like they get Inner Peace, so it reduces by 60 seconds and you take 20% reduced damage while channeling. Now I understand that like channeling Tranquility is like a downside to the spell, but yeah, just 30 seconds doesn't really seem like enough to me. And I think this is the wrong buff for Healing Tide. Mana Tide Totem, I think the main issue with Mana Tide is like the base talent itself doesn't really do enough. It's like 6.4% mana per healer on a 3-minute cooldown. So it's not really, that noticeable or anything, which makes this like first talent that they created kind of meaningless. Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem was a legendary in Shadowlands. And it can be powerful under the right circumstances. So having that as like an option is cool. So I'm okay with that. But I think they need to work on like base Mana Tide and this upgrade node a little bit. Flow the Tides got buffed. This is the upgrade node on Chain Heal here. I hate this buff. So the reason I hate Flow the Tides is it kind of goes against Deluge, Primordial Wave, Undercurrent, and Primal Tidal Core, which are all talents that like have something to do with like Riptide. And if you're just eating Riptide healing to buff your Chain Heal with Flow of the Tides, then it kind of goes against all those talents. So I personally hate Flow of the Tides, and this change would make it so that like Flow of the Tides is strictly better than Ancestral Reach. So you're now playing this mini game of like you find the lowest duration Riptide on your frames, and regardless of their HP, that's who you press Chain Heal on to buff the remaining bounces of your Chain Heal, and that's not very fun. So I almost wish they would just like kind of get rid of Flow of the Tides, or like worst case keep it as is. That way it's not like that intrusive for like if you want to use it in Mythic Plus, for example, you can, and it's like fine. But yeah, I don't like the spell very much. It kind of goes against what the rest of the spec is trying to do. Unleash Life Wellspring is still not good, so you still won't press it. I don't really even know if like a number works that's good for that. But yeah, it's still just not good, even at 40%. Like I said earlier, Ever Rising Tide is gone. That's good. Nature's Focus is gone. That's good. The one talent that I was actually shocked to see was like Tidebringer. For those that don't know, this is a PvP talent that increases the jump range and reduces the cast time of Chain Heal every like 8 seconds. So this used to be a PvP talent, and it will now be on the spec tree. This is actually really nice for fights like, think of like Halandris, Il'gynoth, Broodkeeper this tier, like Broodkeeper in Phase 2, or Dathia, where people are kind of just like more spread out than normal, where Chain Heal might not bounce to people. You can now just take Tidebringer and press chain heal regardless, and it's like more than likely going to jump to someone else nearby. Also slightly increases the like healing of chain heal because since chain heal is like a smart heal, it now has more players to like choose from on who to heal, so that's kind of nice. So yeah, I'm glad that made it to the tree. And then they added a couple of more connections and stuff. So, oops. Here we go. So this is the tree. I think, so there's like some issues with it. One, there are too many points in this top section. So if you look at like Resto Druid, for example, they have 11 points up here, and Evoker has like 9, I think. 7, 8, 9, yeah. And Resto Shaman has 13, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13 points to spend talents on. And you have multiple 2-point nodes up here. So I think they just need to like make these 2-point nodes just a single talent point. That way they're not like as intrusive to path through, because you always have to get Deluge anyway. And then Ancestral Vigor would be like nice to have. You just don't have the talent point to spend on it currently. Flash Flood, I thought this was like a PvP thing, but I was talking to some PvPers last night, and apparently they don't even take it. So this means that this talent is not seeing use anywhere in the game currently. And the only reason you played it in Shadowlands or BFA was for PvP, because your other options were like Downpour at the time, which aren't very good in PvP, or it was Cloudburst Totem, which you didn't play in PvP because you played Healing Stream instead. So I think they just need to get rid of Flash Flood and replace it with something else. And then the last thing, like Water Totem Mastery isn't really like doing a whole lot. You don't play into it at all. It's just like a passive that you have to take to get to Cloudburst Totem. So they could replace this with something, or maybe even like rework this a little bit, like maybe throw Vigor over here or something like that. That way it's like a little bit easier to path through. But reducing the number of points up in this top section, I think should be like the #1 priority for them, as far as that goes. And then just like, yeah, like I said, maybe making these 1 points instead would be nice. But everything else looks good. This middle section I think is like largely okay. I think Torrent needs to be a 1 point, because everything else in this section is 1 point. So spending 2 points on a talent that is already doing like less than 1% of your healing per talent point spent is just not good. So if this was 20% increased initial healing for 1 talent point, then it's like okay. But if it stays as is, you just won't take it. I think the reason that a lot of people are taking it currently is because they just don't want to play Manatide Totem, because Manatide also sucks. So yeah, I think Torrent at 1 point for 20% would make a little bit more sense. And then the only other thing is like I said earlier, Flow of the Tides feels clunky. I don't know if it's necessarily they need to like redesign it. Like I would be okay with them trying something new here, or just keeping it the same. But I don't like. I think if this becomes the like go-to choice, then it feels very weird for Resto Shaman, especially in a raid setting. So I kind of hope that doesn't become the case. These new upgrades to Healing Tide just aren't good enough. Current control, I think it needs to be 60 seconds, like I said earlier. And then Tide Turner, I think either needs to be like just like Healing Tide does X% more healing, like 15% more healing, for example. That way it's actually like a stronger 3-minute cooldown, or it needs to be something, well, I'll talk about that in a little bit on my tree, but I had like another idea to put here instead. And I kind of already talked about Manatide, but I think Manatide just needs buffed, and then that makes the upgrades, quite a bit better. But yeah, I think largely this middle section is okay. Just a couple of touch-ups like Torrent would be okay. And then this bottom section, you still never want to play Improved Primordial Wave, and you still never want to play Improved Earth Living Weapon. I think the only reason you play Earth Living Weapon in PvP is for like Purge Protection, because it like automatically procs on low HP people, so you can have like, so it less likely that your Earth Shield gets purged, for example. But like the healing that it does is really, it's terrible. So I think they need to replace those 2 talent points and add in something new. And I think largely the issue that Shaman has in this bottom section is there are way too many actives. So you have like Ascendance, Downpour, Wellspring, High Tide. While it is a passive, like it is a buff, it's something that you actively like play into. So it's like a little bit of a different passive, I guess. Like you really want to press Chain Heal with it active, for example. And then you also have Primordial Wave. So we need some like better passives down here in this bottom section to make it a little bit more impactful. And then I also think that like having Ascendance be split up here doesn't really make sense. So those are the things that I tried to address with the tree that I made. So I made this last night, like right before I went to bed. It still needs some improvements, I think, but I'll just kind of cover some of the stuff I tried to fix. So one, I didn't reduce the overall number of nodes here, but it's possible to do by like moving, like if you were to move Vigor over in place of Water Totem Mastery, for example, that helps out. But I did make Vigor and Deluge 1-point talents, and then I replaced Flash Flood with a single point talent of Earth and Harmony. Because contrary to popular belief, Earth and Harmony is actually quite good. You still want it in PvP and Mythic Plus, and like there are scenarios where you would play it in Raid as well. But having it be 2 points and also having it gatekeep Ascendance feels really bad. So I think it made more sense to throw up here in the top part as something that you can grab if you want to, or dodge if you don't, kind of thing. That way, you can still come down here and still play Ascendance. So those were my improvements I've made for the top part of the tree. The middle part, I largely kept the same. I made Torrent, like I said earlier, I made it 20% increased initial healing for 1 talent point instead. So that makes it a little bit more, passable, I guess, to pad through to get to like Earthen Wall or something if you want to. And then I updated these Healing Tide Totem choice nodes. So reduces the cooldown of Healing Tide by 60 seconds as choice 1, or Vision of Perfection Major, which was something we had in BFA as part of the Essence system. You just have a random chance to summon Healing Tide Totem for 3 seconds. Like I said earlier, you could also just make this like Healing Tide Totem is more powerful. And I'm glad that they're adding in like a upgrade to Healing Tide Totem, because I agree that like Healing Tide is weak, but that's something very easily fixable with the talent tree, right? And there was room to do so here. So I'm glad they're doing it. I just don't think they really hit the mark with their either 30-second CDR or Tide Turner. I don't think either of those were very, were good enough to warrant spending talent points into. And I didn't like update the note here, but I do think Mana Tide needs a buff, and then that makes both of the upgrade nodes at least, something that you can like actually take if you want to. And then I moved quite a bit down here in the bottom part of the tree. This was like the part I spent the most time on. So like I said earlier, I moved Ascendance up. So it's just 1 point for Ascendance. That fixes the issue. So Ascendance had like a couple of issues. It was locked behind 2 talent points, which felt bad. So it essentially made a 3-point talent, which was not very good. It still has the issues of being like clumped up healing, so it's only within people of 20 yards. It's not smart healing, so it does a lot of overhealing currently. Almost like 50% of the spell is overhealing. And it still doesn't feed Cloudburst, which kind of sucks. So, but I think having it just be 1 talent point and something that you can grab, and then have something that can like upgrade it, similar to like what Elemental Shamans do, feels a little bit better. Makes more sense to me. So this at least sort of fixes that issue. And then I just had Deeply Rooted Elements as a 2-point node below it. That way, because Deeply Rooted Elements on its own is like pretty bad. So if it's locked behind Ascendance, 1, that makes sense, and then 2, this gives you the opportunity to like buff Deeply Rooted Elements in some way, maybe. Or you could have something else here entirely, remove Deeply Rooted Elements, or add in even an additional node here to like somehow empower, like maybe if you place Healing Rain whenever Ascendance is active, similar to like the Ellie Shaman thing, it just like extends Ascendance or something, like some sort of upgrade to it would be nice. I kept the rest of these top part's the same. I kept their Tidebringer the same, but this is the like upgrade that I was talking about earlier. The every 16 seconds or 8 seconds if talented, the cast time of your next chain heal is reduced, and jump distance is increased. So yeah, huge quality of life thing. Not something that you would always run, but something that's like really nice on a few like specific fights in particular. And then I just flat out removed improved Earth Living or improved Primordial Wave, because you never want to spend those points anyway. And like continuous waves feels really good, but I couldn't really come up with like any other Primordial Wave like buffs that you can add to like lock behind here. So either they need to like massively buff improved Primordial Wave to where it's like actually like something that you want to play into, because I think a lot of people aren't really seeing a whole lot of value out of Primordial Wave anyway, or just have it be like this where you can just go to instantly to continuous waves. And then the two things I added in that were new was Heal the Soul as a 2-point talent. This was our 4-piece from Sepulcher. I know a lot of people have like asked about this, and I think the main issue, like I said earlier, is like Resto Shaman needs more passives in the bottom here. It was really hard to come up with more passives. Like I was like, oh, they could add like Gift of the Queen, which are our artifact ability. That would be nice to have in, but and they could still do that if they wanted to, but I think Heal the Soul is like a great passive. It's recent, so and it's not like intrusive to play or anything like that. So that would actually be a passive that would be I'd like to see in this like capstone area of the tree. And then the other one I had, because I was kind of struggling to come up with like good passives to put down here, is the tier 21. So this is like Entorus 4-piece. Which is Healing Wave and Healing Surge casts have a 100% chance to heal a player standing in your healing range for 40% of the amount. And you can also make this like a 2-point talent if you wanted to. So it'd be like 40% of the amount or 80% of the amount or whatever. But yeah, just something else to add in. I do think like they really need to replace improved Earth Living Weapon and improved Primordial Wave, and then like change up this top part of the tree because it's kind of a nightmare at the moment, and that solves quite a bit of Resto Shaman's weaknesses currently. I still think like, and the Healing Tide upgrades, because it's still a really weak cooldown. Hopefully the Wellspring change doesn't go through, because if it does, that's going to be really sad, like not playing that ability anymore, because we've played it for so long in Raid now, and you already don't play it in Mythic Plus or PvP. And then yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with like Swirling Currents and Focused Insight, but I don't hate them trying to remove some of the like bonuses that we have, because I agree it's a little clunky, but yeah, we'll see where they land on that with that. But yeah, that's all I really want to talk about today. So I will, hopefully we see some updates like next week or the week after. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.